Could you imagine hearing the impossible? Not from a stranger, from people you trust, your closest friends. And they tell you, Jesus is alive. We saw him. We spoke to him. But your heart is still carrying grief. The last thing you saw was the cross. The pain is still fresh, so you hesitate. Would you believe them? Or would you need to see it for yourself? This is the story of Thomas. His name was Thomas, also called Didymus, which means the twin. Scripture doesn't tell us much about his background, but it shows us how he thought. Thomas wasn't the kind of man who just nodded along. He asked questions, honest questions. When others stayed quiet, Thomas spoke. Not because he lacked faith, but because he wanted truth. History gave him one name, Doubting Thomas. But that label comes from one moment. Before that, Thomas said something most people forget. When Jesus chose to go somewhere dangerous, where death was a real possibility, it was Thomas who said, "Let us go also, that we may die with him." That's not doubt. That's loyalty. That's courage. Thomas wasn't weak. He was committed. Then came the cross. Everything changed. The hope they followed seemed to die with him. The disciples hid behind locked doors. Fear replaced faith. And then, Jesus appeared, alive. But Thomas wasn't there. Imagine missing that moment. Everyone else has certainty, and you're left with questions. So when they told him, Thomas answered honestly, "Unless I see it myself, I will not believe." 8 days later, they were together again. This time, Thomas was there, and suddenly, Jesus stood in the room. He looked directly at him and said, "Touch my hands, see the wounds, stop doubting, and believe." Jesus didn't shame him, he met him. And Thomas responded with words that still echo today, "My Lord and my God." Jesus didn't reject Thomas, he came back for him, specifically for him. That changes everything, because it means doubt isn't the end of faith. It can be the doorway to it. Thomas didn't walk away, he stayed. He kept showing up, even with questions, and Jesus met him there. Thomas didn't stay the doubter. He became something more. Tradition says he traveled farther than most, carrying the message across nations. The man who once needed proof became a man who gave everything for what he saw. Not because his questions disappeared, but because they were answered. And the answer was worth following. Thomas wanted truth, not performance, not pretending, truth. And Jesus gave it to him. So maybe the question isn't, why did Thomas doubt? Maybe the question is, what would you have done? If you had been in that room, would you have believed immediately? Or would you have needed to see? There's no shame in the answer. He came back for Thomas, and he comes back for us. Subscribe to Word in Motion. Next episode, Matthew. That story hits different.